did the therapy. You read the books. You said the affirmation. You no longer answer their texts. And then today, something small happened. A tone of voice, a certain look, a message that started with your name. And your body went somewhere your mind hasn't been in months. Heart rate up, chest tight, the familiar dread. And somewhere in the back of your head, a voice said, I thought I was past this. Why am I still like this? Maybe I'll never actually heal. I need to stop you right there. Because that thought, that getting triggered means you're not healing, is one of the most damaging lies circulating in the recovery spaces right now. And I'm gonna spend the next few minutes dismantling it completely. Let's start with what healing actually is, because most people have it wrong. Healing is not the absence of pain. It is not becoming trigger proof. It is not reaching a state where the past no longer exists inside your body. Healing is the recalibration of your relationship to what you feel. It's about changing the way you relate to your emotions, so they stop controlling you and start informing you. That is the only honest definition. And that distinction between elimination and recalibration changes everything about how you measure your own progress. Now let me give you the neuroscience in plain language. Your nervous system is not a logical system. It is a survival system. And survival systems do not operate on timelines. They operate on patterns. When you were in that relationship or that home or that environment, your nervous system was doing its job. It was scanning constantly, looking for threat clues, learning what sounds, what tones, what silences, what body language preceded danger. Because that's what the nervous system does under chronic threat conditions. They build a threat library. Stephen Porges, the neuroscientist behind the polyvagal theory, calls this neuroception, the nervous system's below conscious evaluation of safety and danger. It's not thinking, it's faster than thinking. It happens before a prefrontal cortex even knows a stimulus arrived, which means a trigger is not a thought. A trigger is a psychological response to a pattern that resembles something dangerous. The key word, resembles. Your nervous system does not know the difference between the person who hurt you and someone whose tone of voice sounds like that person. It responds to similarity, not identity. So here's what actually happened when you got triggered today. Your nervous system detected a pattern, a tone, a word, a smell, a posture, something your threat library recognized as a precursor to danger. And it did exactly what it was trained to do. It sent you a signal, brace. That signal is not weakness. That signal isn't evidence you have not healed. The signal isn't wrong. It's reading from an older file. Bessel van der Kolk wrote that the body keeps the score. That is not a metaphor. It is literally true. Traumatic memory is not stored like ordinary memory is. Ordinary memory is stored as narrative. A story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. You can place it in a line. It happened then, not now. Traumatic memory is stored as sensation, fragment, and atmosphere. It doesn't have a clear timestamp, which is why when a trigger happens, it doesn't feel like remembering. It feels like happening. Not, I remember being afraid, but I am afraid. Not then, now. This is critical because it changes the entire framework of what healing looks like. If triggers are stored as sensation and not narrative, then healing is not about erasing the sensation. It's about updating the timestamp. It's about the nervous system learning over time that the threat has passed, that the environment is different, that the pattern it's responding to is historical, not current. And that learning happens slowly, not linearly and perfectly. It happens in therapy, in safe relationships, in the body, through breath, movement, somatic work. Peter Levine's somatic experience model is exactly built on this principle. The body needs to complete the survival response it was interrupted from completing. When it does, the charge held in the nervous system begins to discharge. That's why, after a certain kind of therapeutic work, survivors sometimes feel shaking or heat or unexpected crying with no specific memory attached, and then a strange deep calm they haven't felt in years. That's not a breakdown, that's completion. The nervous system finally got to finish what chronic survival mode never let it finish. But here's where the real shift happens in recovery. The goal is not to stop the trigger from firing. The goal is to change your relationship to what you feel after it fires. Before healing, the trigger fires. You are flooded. You are inside that past experience. You cannot distinguish from then and from now. You react from the past. After healing work, the trigger fires. You feel the flood. You recognize what's happening. You can name it. You create a moment of conscious separation between the sensation and your response. You choose from the present. That gap between sensation and response is where the freedom lives. Viktor Frankl called it the space between stimulus and response, where our power and freedom reside. And for trauma survivors, creating that space is not theoretical. It is the hardest, most important psychological work of recovery. So what does this look like practically? Here's the 3-step recalibration framework you can use the next time a trigger fires. Step 1, name it out loud if possible, even to yourself. I am triggered, not I am in danger, not this is happening again. I am triggered. Naming it activates the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, which begins to establish a different relationship to the subcortical alarm system. Language creates distance. Distance creates choice. Step 2, locate it. Where is it in your body? Your chest, your throat, your stomach, your jaw? Place your hand there, not to fix it, just to acknowledge it. You are communicating to your nervous system that you are present with the sensation rather than the feeling from it. You are the one holding it, not the other way around. Step 3, orient. Look around you. Name 5 things you can see. Hear 2 sounds. Feel your feet on the floor. That is grounding. A direct nervous system intervention that activates what Porges calls the ventral vagal state, the psychological state of social safety. Your nervous system updates its location. Here, not there. Now, not then. None of this is magic. None of this eliminates the original wound, but it builds something the narcissistic relationship systematically destroyed. Your capacity to be with your own experience without being run by it. I want to speak to something that doesn't get said enough in recovery spaces. If you come from a faith tradition, and many of you in this community do, you may have added a layer of shame to the trigger experience that has nothing to do with neuroscience. You may have thought, my faith was strong enough, I wouldn't have felt this. If I'd forgiven properly, this wouldn't still affect me. Let me be clear. Forgiveness is a relational act. It concerns the connection between you and the person. Your nervous system is a biological system. It concerns your survival architecture. These are different systems operating on different timelines. You can have genuinely forgiven someone fully, completely, spiritually, and still be triggered by stimuli that resembled what a subject did to you. Because the nervous system doesn't process forgiveness. It processes pattern recognition. Your faith is not failing you. Your nervous system is doing what God designed it to do. Protect you. The work of healing is helping it understand that the protection is no longer needed in the same way. So the next time you get triggered, and you will, I want you to hear something different. Not, I thought I was past this, but my nervous system is doing its job, and I know now how to work with it. That is not a small thing. That is the difference between being a passenger in your own recovery and being the driver. Triggers don't mean you're broken. They mean you survived something that left a mark, and that mark doesn't disappear. But over time, with the right work, the right support, the right understanding of what's actually happening inside you, the mark stops running the show. You do. How long did you believe that being triggered meant you weren't healing? Drop it in the comments. I'll see you there.